If you understood what we discussed in the last video, then you stopped begging for unconditional love. Now we go deeper. Because once you accept that love has conditions, you face the next danger. Love isn't just fragile. Love is blinding. Love is leverage. And if you don't understand its shadow, you will call your own captivity devotion. This is not a rant against love. This is a reconnaissance report on what love does to judgment. We'll move through two lenses: Machiavelli, who studied power without romance, and Jung, who studied the unconscious without sentimentality. Same mission, higher stakes, see clearly, choose cleanly, never be ruled. Welcome back. We are back with another one. Make sure you hit that like button for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe to the channel. All right, let's get into it. Love starts as warmth, comfort, permission to exhale. Then, if you're not careful, it tightens. That's how it works. The first phase of love feels like freedom because you're being chosen. The second phase tests whether you can still choose yourself. Most men don't notice the transition. They think loyalty means shrinking. They think commitment means surrendering their standards. Slowly, they become predictable, then manageable, then owned. Not necessarily by a villain, sometimes by a wounded person, sometimes by a good person who simply enjoys control, sometimes by your own fear of loss. The standard is simple. If love requires you to abandon self-respect, it is not love. It is an appetite with a leash. Machiavelli's world was not built for fairy tales. It was built for betrayal, shifting alliances, and men who smiled while reaching for the knife. His observation was clean. People are loyal when it's convenient. When the weather changes, they discover new principles. That's why he wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved, not because love is worthless, but because love is often a fair-weather bond. It relies on continued satisfaction, continued belief, continued advantage. Fear, in his model, is structural. It's predictable. It holds when emotions fluctuate. Translate that into modern life. If you build your entire identity on being liked by a partner, a friend group, an audience, you become vulnerable to any shift in approval. You start negotiating with your own spine. Your objective is not to become cruel. It is to become unplayable. Be kind, but never dependent on kindness being rewarded. Be generous, but never blind. Julius Caesar was loved. He was charismatic, forgiving, magnanimous, and he pardoned men who later buried steel in his body. The point isn't never forgive. The point is that love and mercy can intoxicate a leader, or any man, with a false sense of safety. You start believing your intentions rewrite other people's incentives. They don't. Some men interpret mercy as weakness. Some interpret forgiveness as opportunity. Some interpret trust as access. Machiavelli would call Caesar's fall predictable. If you rely on affection as your armor, you will eventually be cut. Action standard: forgive when it makes strategic sense. Trust only after proof under stress, and never confuse your goodness with someone else's gratitude. A king gave up an empire for a woman. History frames it as romance, a noble sacrifice, a love story. But step back. Strip the music away. What happened? A man traded duty and legacy for emotion. He chose a feeling over a kingdom. This is what love does when it becomes your highest value. It rearranges your hierarchy. It makes the private mood outrank the public mission. It makes you abandon what you were built to carry. You don't need a crown to make the same mistake. Men do it every day. They abandon their purpose to keep a partner. They abandon their friendships to avoid conflict at home. They abandon their standards to avoid loneliness. The standard: love must fit inside your mission. If love becomes the mission, you will lose both. Machiavelli wasn't telling you to live loveless. He was telling you to understand love as an influence. When people love you, they're easier to lead, easier to persuade, easier to disarm. That's why the most dangerous people learn to appear virtuous. They learn the performance: warmth, sincerity, devotion. They let you feel safe. Then they steer you. This isn't paranoia. It's a social reality. Everyone plays perception. Some play it unconsciously. Some play it like a blade. So you need a rule for protection. Watch consistency, not intensity. Intensity is easy to manufacture. Consistency costs something. If someone's love is loud but their behavior is unstable, you're not being loved. You're being managed. Now we enter the psychological theater. Jung's insight was surgical. Much of what people call love is projection. You meet someone and your unconscious throws an image over them like a silk mask. They don't just seem attractive, they seem destined. That magic is often your own unmet needs, your unclaimed desires, your childhood hunger, searching for a body to attach to. So you don't love the person, you love what you think they mean. And that's why early love feels religious. Because you're not dealing with the other person yet. You're dealing with your inner mythology. Action standard: move slower when you feel certain. Certainty is the hallmark of projection. Ask yourself, what am I imagining that I haven't verified? Jung also gave us the shadow, the parts of yourself you deny, repress, or disguise. Love activates the shadow because love increases exposure. When you care, you become vulnerable. When you become vulnerable, old fear wakes up. Fear of abandonment, fear of betrayal, fear of being replaced, fear of not being enough. That fear doesn't just sit there. It recruits tactics: jealousy, control, manipulation, testing, silent punishment. This is where people become dangerous to each other, not because they hate, but because they're terrified. And the tragedy is this: they blame their partner for the feelings their own shadow produced. The standard: if you become controlling, you are not protecting love, you are protecting your ego. If you become jealous, don't moralize it, diagnose it. What fear is underneath? If you can't name your fear, it will drive your behavior like a hidden hand. Jung believed the purpose of life was individuation, becoming whole, becoming a self. Most people use love to avoid that. They search for someone to complete them. They call it romance. But it's avoidance disguised as devotion. Two incomplete people can feel intense love. But intensity is not stability. It's hunger. Real love requires two whole individuals choosing each other without dissolving into each other. No begging. No merging into a single identity. No, you are my world. Because when someone becomes your world, you hand them your oxygen supply. Here is the final standard, the one that decides whether love becomes a crucible or a cage. Maintain a life you are proud of without them. Speak the truth even when it risks comfort. Refuse relationships that require you to shrink. It will show you your discipline or your neediness, your strength or your dependency, your clarity or your hunger for a fantasy. And if you can look into that mirror without flinching, love becomes powerful for the right reason. Not because it completes you, but because it complements what you've already built. Control love and you control your choices. Let love control you, and it will quietly rewrite your life. That is the mission. See clearly, choose cleanly, and never abdicate your throne. Once again, I appreciate you for sticking to the end. Make sure you hit that like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. I'll catch you on the next one.